What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about my top five best compact or small iPhones in 2022. So if you're looking for a small iPhone, I'm going to be going over all the prices and what you should buy these phones for. So my favorite on the list, my personal favorite, is the iPhone 12 mini. I think if you're going to buy a small iPhone, this is the one to go with because the price has come down pretty dramatic for Amazon's renew, refurbish, and on eBay they're fluctuating between $450 to $500, and I think this is an awesome deal for just getting this type of flagship for that price point. So if you've never used these smaller iPhones, think of it, it's actually even smaller than like an iPhone 8 body size. So it's very comfortable to one hand. It's got the premium design on here, aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. You also have the Super Retina XDR OLED display on here. It's HDR10. 5.4 inches, 1080p, 476 for the PPI. Overall, just a really beautiful panel on here as far as watching videos and the color and all that good stuff. So this phone is still extremely powerful with the Apple A14 chip. You also have 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. If you do decide to buy this phone, you will be able to use it pretty much for like 8 years because I think Apple software support is somewhere around that. So if you buy it, you can use it for an extremely long time. Very powerful, plays pretty much any game you throw at it. It's a really beast of a device as far as power goes. The speakers are actually very impressive on this phone as well too. Very loud speakers, really good bass quality. All your little bells and whistles are on here as far as IP68, Face ID works great. You also have Apple Pay on here as well. Now, I think the highlight with the 12 mini is definitely the camera setup. So it's a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It also shoots in 4K, 24, 30, and 60. And the image quality on here is just extremely good. The 12 megapixel selfie is also extremely good. It also shoots in the 4K, 24 through 60. And it's just an amazing camera to take photos on. So definitely still very much flagship quality on here. Not really missing out on anything as far as comparing it to the newer iPhones. So the only, I guess, downside with this phone is that it kind of has a smaller battery. So it's got a 2,227 milliamp battery. It's got 20-watt fast charging, and then you have wireless charging with your MagSafe wireless charging. So battery life on here, I was getting around like 4 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time with this phone, which is definitely not all day. But it's not terrible, but definitely this is a phone that you're gonna have to charge. But if you can get past that, the battery life on here is really not that bad if you're a light user. Overall, I really do like this device for this price. Alright guys, next option is going to be the iPhone SE 2020. Actually, I do still prefer this one because the price has came down again pretty good on this phone. It's around 200 bucks now, and it's just a really good deal. I think it's just a better bargain than the new SE 2022 because that phone is 430 and it's really not that different from the original SE 2020. Alright, so this phone pretty much has the iPhone 8 body style. It's aluminum frame, glass back, IP67, dust and water resistant. It's a very small phone with an even smaller display at 4.7 inches. So this is a super tiny phone. It's a Retina IPS panel. It's 720p, 326 for the PPI. And overall, it's a fairly good looking screen, but definitely a little bit dated with the chunky bezels. But what is really awesome about the SE, which a lot of people like, is that this phone has Touch ID, and it has that physical home button, which a lot of people like. So if that's you, this is definitely a great bargain for around that $200 price point now, which I also think is pretty sweet. So this phone has the Apple A13 chip. This phone is still extremely fast when it comes to bouncing in and out of applications. Also gaming, it can still game at the highest settings. It's a very fast phone. That's why I say you don't really need to spend that extra money on the SE 2022. It's unnecessary unless you really want the 5G. You also have 64 gigs of internal storage and 3 gigs of RAM. This phone does have stereo speakers, which sound pretty good. Not as good as the bigger iPhones, or the not the bigger ones, but the 12 mini or 13 mini, stuff like that. You also have NFC on here. The fingerprint scanner is on the front, of course, with Touch ID. Again, that's something a lot of people like. So here's the thing about the cameras. The cameras, it's a 12 megapixel standard, but that's it. So there's no ultra wide, no telephoto. It's just one lens. But if you can get over that, it's actually a very good camera still. It's a 4K shooter, 24 frames through 60. And then you have a 7 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1080p. Basically, you get some really good shots with this phone. Like I said, the only thing is that it's just that single lens, but it is a very impressive lens. Good detail, good skin tones. Overall, I was really happy with the image quality. So this is a phone that the battery life is also not going to be too crazy. It's a 1,821 milliamp battery. It's 18 watts with wireless charging, and it's around, again, that 4 hour and 30-minute mark. Which is fine. Again, for this size phone, that's definitely, it's fine. So if you're a light user, it shouldn't be too big of a deal, but I really like the price on this phone. Now, next is the iPhone 13 mini. This one ranges from around 639 renewed, refurbished, and this one is very similar to the iPhone 12 mini, but it has, I guess, two essential things that you really need to know. So pretty much the same design, aluminum frame, glass back, IP68. The notch on this phone is actually smaller, which I think might appeal to some people if you really care about, just getting the most out of the screen, right? It's a Super Retina XDR OLED display, HDR10. It's 800 nits peak brightness, and then it's 5.4 inches. 1080p 476 for the PPI. Like I said, the same display, very, very nice display, but with a smaller notch. The Apple A15 chip, extremely fast. Again, this is a flagship phone, so it's going to be blazing fast, blows through anything you play. 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM is really sweet. The stereo speakers, again, very loud. Face ID, very fast. So, like I said, very much the same as the 12 mini. Here's where it differs from. So, this phone, it does have a 2,438 milliamp battery with 18 watt charging, wireless charging, MagSafe charging. This phone has much better battery life than any of the other phones on this list. So I've seen screen on times where people are getting around 6 hours of screen on time with this phone. So that's much better than the 4 hours and 30 minutes that you would get on a 12 mini or something like that. So this one, if you do want a phone with great battery life that is very small, this is actually one of the best phones for that, I think, out right now, out of any phone, as far as this size goes. So I really, really like that. The cameras are pretty good on here. Again, not too much different from the 12 mini's cameras in my opinion. It's still the same dual camera setup, 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel ultra wide, same 4K, 24 through 60 FPS, 12 megapixel selfie, 4K, 24 through 60 as well. And image quality looks very good, as you would expect for a flagship device, so you're going to get a top-notch camera here. So like I said, the main thing with this phone is smaller notch and much better battery life, and also slightly faster, but it's really just a notch in the battery life. Alright, next is going to be the iPhone 7. I absolutely love this phone. This is a very, very good phone. I think it's around $100. So if you're on like a budget where you just need a phone, a really good phone that's $100, instead of getting I'm just being honest, most Android phones for $100 aren't really worth it. But this phone is actually still pretty good, and what's crazy about this phone is that it's gonna be running iOS 16 as well too. You gotta remember, this phone came out in 2016, so pretty amazing. This actually has one of my favorite designs too. It's a full aluminum body on here. And it's also IP67 dust and water resistant. Absolutely love the design and how this phone feels. Again, it's a small phone, 4.7 inches, Retina IPS display, and it is a 720p display, 326 for the PPI. Very small. All of these phones are very easy to one hand. Like I said, very impressed that this phone is going to get iOS 16. It has the Apple A10 chip, which is pretty decently fast. In 2022, it's not anything crazy. Sometimes I get little stutters here and there, but performance wise, I can do all of my basic things on this phone pretty easily, as far as like web browsing, social media, playing light games. It's not really that good for gaming these days, but For just general use, it's actually still pretty good. You also have 32 gigs of internal storage, which is kind of low, and then 2 gigs of RAM on here as well. But performance wise was my main concern, but it's really not that bad. So this phone also has somewhat of an aging camera, so it's again with the one single lens, 12 megapixel standard, 4K 30, 7 megapixel selfie, 1080p. It actually does not take that bad of photos in good lighting. It's only when you take it out of good lighting do the photos start to get a little soft, a little grainy. But other than that, I think the camera, if you're in actual good lighting, still has aged pretty well. This phone has stereo speakers, which is really nice. They sound pretty decently loud as well too. Apple Pay is on here. The physical fingerprint scanner is on here, of course. Battery life is pretty much the same as all the other smaller iPhones. You're looking at around like 4 hours still with this one. But I really do like the iPhone 7. I think it's pretty impressive for $100 to be running the latest software. I think it's a really impressive premium phone still. And again, $100, this could be easily a backup phone as well too. So yeah, so I really like this phone at this. All right, last is the iPhone 8. So the iPhone 8 is kind of in this awkward spot here. So I would say that you can get an iPhone 8, but you have to be cautious of the price you're paying for it, because the iPhone SE is kind of at the same price as the iPhone 8, which is really odd. So like I was saying, renew refurbished right now, SE 2020 will cost you like $200, but the iPhone 8 for whatever reason is still kind of hovering around close to that. So I would say if you can get an iPhone 8, you want to try to get it as close to $130 for an iPhone 8. You don't want to pay $200 for this phone, because like I said, it's too close to the SE. If you're gonna spend $200, don't get the iPhone 8, just get the SE. It's a much better phone. So like I said, the iPhone 8 kind of awkward, but get it if you can get it for like close to that $130, something like that. I wouldn't even spend 150 on this phone, because honestly, just get the SE. Just save up the extra $50 and get the SE. But if you do get it at that price point, it's still a solid phone, still the same, pretty much the same design, the same screen as all the other iPhones, the same screen as the SE. It's actually still a good performer as far as the specs. It's running the latest version of iOS. It's got Apple A11 chip in it, which actually does a really good job speed wise. It's still a pretty snappy phone, bouncing in and out of applications and stuff like that. The cameras are definitely a step up from the iPhone 7, but they're not as good as the iPhone SE. And everything about this phone is still pretty much the same as all the other iPhones. You got Touch ID, you got your 4K video. You also got on here pretty much essentially the same battery life at around 4 hours and 30 minutes. So the iPhone 8 is kind of a strange pick, like I said, because the price is not right on this phone yet. But I think once the price comes down, I think it'll come down to well under the $150. I'm just not sure why these are still trending for $200 if the iPhone SE 2020 is also in that same price bracket. So that's pretty much it, guys. Be sure to let me know what do you guys think, and I will catch you guys in the next one.